my goodness, the first and probably only presidential debate of 2024 between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump has just concluded, and it went so dang well. You can see, even after hours of live coverage and it being nighttime, I'm pumped up. Because we just wrapped up live coverage, I don't want to deliver to you, or probably couldn't do it as effectively, just a bunch of stuff up front. Instead, let's just go through a few clips. We have a bunch of clips, and I'll give you my takeaways from this debate as we go through them, starting with this moment, Kamala Harris brilliantly getting under Trump's skin, and he increasingly spun out of control because of it.
I ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
I mean, that's it, right? That's the most fundamental part of this election. I'll try not to go on too long because I want this to be somewhere you can quickly recap if you missed some of it or want to review what you already watched. I do, of course, encourage you to watch the entire thing. You can even watch our coverage of it and see my facial reactions while these moments were happening live. And then also, we were doing live, if you weren't watching the live coverage, fact-checking with a little white box that will pop up, and we fact check. And you'll be shocked to hear we essentially had to do most of the work on that when Trump was talking. Then you have this.
Instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
And so after that led to Trump claiming, no, my rallies are not, and all of that, of course, led to him being more triggered, which then throws him off of his rocker. So as we go through more of these moments, and they're kind of jumbled in terms of the chronological nature of them, but you'll notice Trump gets more and more infuriated because of that type of attack, and it perfectly prevents him from sticking to a plan that he probably prepped with his team because he's too focused on how angry he is. An example of the unhinged Trump was this.
It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the...
And she goes on to tell the story of what we know January 6th to have been, which was an assault on our democracy prompted by Trump's lies about that democracy. And your average American seeing Trump shouting about how he's not to blame, even though it was his supporters based on his lies and his encouragement of them going to the Capitol, and saying it's Nancy Pelosi's fault because which he didn't, but he says he begged her for National Guard troops to be there on January 6th. Wait, but even though the president is the person who's actually has the ultimate authority, I should say, on the National Guard, then it was awesome to see Vice President Harris's facial reactions while Trump was saying crazy stuff like this.
I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy, but if she ever got elected, she'd change it, and it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions.
Yeah, and then on to the stuff that we've heard too many times from him. And you have this as well, brilliantly, perfectly, and accurately calling out how Trump has damaged in some monumental and devastating ways the reproductive rights of women.
To agree, the government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that.
And this dynamic, if you'll split screen, Jaden, of Vice President Kamala Harris directly looking at Trump as he stared forward, I think came off correctly for Harris. Because a big thing, for some reason, that undecided voters I've been hearing from have been saying was a concern for them is perceiving Harris as strong, right? So this debate was a moment where they wanted to see her come off like someone who can clash with the authoritarians in the world and handle engagements with them. And Trump, I heard someone make this point, sort of served as a stand-in for those enemies. And he has authoritarian ambitions of his own. And so watching how she would engage with him as a bully and the antagonist was important to people. And so him just sort of staring forward while she directed strong points at him came off perfectly. If you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Then finally, a Democratic politician to Trump's face brought up the unbelievable, inconceivable, and disqualifying post about the Constitution from him.
They're
President Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House.
With immunity. Yeah, exactly as that clip would go on to say. And imagine how messed up our information environment has to be for a presidential candidate who's going to, if he were to win, take an oath of the Constitution to post something that says termination of all rules, regulation, articles, even those found in the Constitution is justified based on Trump's election lies, according to him. And for so few people to really know about that. So the fact that she got to bring it up there, it's been a long day, was fantastic to see, because hopefully some people will Google it and go, that's not good. And that guy is going to be president with the Supreme Court ruling saying he could be above the law? No, thank you. Then Trump doubled down on his election lies.
Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it.
And then he goes on to tell the lies that you're very familiar with. Do you need to hear them again? I don't think so, because you need to hear, if you haven't already, or you want to listen to this for some reason, but the response Trump had to the question about him saying that Vice President Harris, quote unquote, turned black all of a sudden and wasn't black and then now became it or something. And yes, Trump's reaction is bonkers and he's so uncomfortable. But the way that it's turned around, and I know if you're just stumbling across this and you're centrist, maybe you're going to be like, Luke, you're such a Harris cheerleader on this. Gosh, be rational. But I'm telling you, I was ready. And I'll show you the one clip that I'll cite as an example of what maybe people will criticize, what didn't come off correctly for Harris. And I was ready, based on how this went, to say, as we had to after the Biden one, obviously, that didn't go as I wanted it to. My task here is to be honest with you, and I honestly think this just went really well for Harris, so that's why that's my reaction to you. But here is Harris then turning it around in a perfect way.
I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that.
It's actually really good to watch these again, because in the heat of the moment, we were doing fact checking and all this stuff was happening. Him doubling down, he couldn't help himself. And her face, and him trying to pretend like someone else said it. I don't know, but did I? Who knows? I don't care. Why are you making this deal? No, you were posting her birth certificate saying that it proved she wasn't black, which it didn't. It proved that she is, but that was you. That's you. Don't make this, the moderator, you're making a deal of something.
And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was
and goes on to talk about the career and racist history there with Trump. Oh, we have so much to get through. We don't have time. But you see, she didn't talk about her being offended or get into, obviously, there's no place for a debate about that. Instead goes, you hear that? He's doing it again. I don't have to engage with it because he's a child. But what I will engage with is the type of thing he's doing, which is the division. We can unite. Race, gender, background. We can unite as Americans. Not if he's leading us, though. Trump did have a few glitches.
Create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she does.
You just gotta love the face whenever she's watching him struggle. And talk about struggle.
Yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
talking about a healthcare plan that he promised back in 2016 while he was president, despite him claiming, I guess, there to the contrary, that he had time to do this. He never came up with a healthcare plan. He was 2 weeks away every single week. And now as president, or as a presidential candidate in 2016, he first started saying he's about to roll out a healthcare plan. Now in 2024, on the debate stage, he's made progress. Don't worry. From 2016 to 2024, we went from no healthcare plan to concepts for a plan. Perfect. Then you have Trump pushing this debunked story.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance.
Yeah. And the country keeps getting stronger under Biden-Harris, despite him claiming that. She, Vice President Harris, that is, multiple times had to clarify for Trump that you know you're running against me, right? Not Biden, because of stuff like this.
And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had.
false, and we brought it down quicker than other countries post-pandemic crisis, and she is not denying her association with the successful Biden-Harris administration, but instead saying with that record, she can bolster proposals she has that she would have more authority to implement as president if we elect her in November. Then you have Trump a little bit confused, it seems, about IVF.
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader.
Was that clarification for the audience or for Trump? What am I talking about? IVF? What's IVF again? It was good to see. One of my takeaways, and we'll talk more probably throughout the night and then into tomorrow about the debate, reactions to it, criticisms, all that. One of my compliments, I think the moderators handled it well. They didn't really give, even though MAGA media will claim otherwise, they didn't give justification to MAGA to say that they were super biased against Trump. They could have been more aggressive, is my point. But for aesthetic reasons and making sure, it can't seem like Trump had 3 people against him, I think they handled it perfectly fine and did fact check him like this.
You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow.
So they're fact-checking Trump, making a bizarre claim that's not true about Putin meeting with Harris, and then right after invading Ukraine, Harris did meet with Zelensky, and that was one of the things she cited as things that she's been, when people ask, what has she been up to as vice president? She's been working to unite the world in support of one of our allies as the authoritarian government of Russia invades unjustly a sovereign nation. More moments like this.
From being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Yeah, and Trump really struggled to get his head around that. We've been seeing him complaining at rallies over and over that Biden's not the nominee anymore. It's so unfair. We spent all this money running against Biden, and they kicked him off, and it was a coup. Hey, if Biden's not saying that it was a coup, then you definitely shouldn't be saying that. Biden can speak for himself. He made a decision. Yes, there was pressure, but he had the right to refuse to succumb to that pressure, and he chose, you know what, I agree. Ultimately, I can't win. I think Vice President Harris does have a shot at winning. At one point, Trump refused to say he wants Ukraine to win. But for the sake of speed, we'll go through this. Vice President Harris pointed out that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security, talked about, this is why you got to watch the whole thing. There's no way. Otherwise, I would just watch every single clip in the entire debate with you to give you everything that was notable. But one thing she kept saying was people around you, your former Secretary of Defense, your top national security officials. You have one person coming out of your administration after another who were in the Situation Room with you saying you're a disgrace. Oh, and every time she would say it, it was great. January 6th, that topic did not go well for Trump.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace.
So a lie there about fatalities and pushing the same stuff we've heard him push for so long about January 6th. Seeing Harris talk about the threat that Trump posed to democracy, substantiating and talking about our policy proposals coming off professional and presidential, and then contrasting that against Trump ranting about January 6th and how he did nothing wrong and it was perfectly fine that his supporters attacked the Capitol. And actually, the people who attacked the Capitol are patriots, and we should do or hand over our heart to the national anthem that they sing from prison. Trump did this, and it just didn't come off right.
She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out.
Yeah. referring to when in the Pence debate, Harris said, "I'm speaking to Pence." Yeah, but see, doing that and referencing it when most people don't know what he's talking about, you come off a little bit psycho, and you have this key moment. Harris pointing to the fact that Trump is a civilly liable sexual abuser.
Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form
And of course, crime is actually lower than it was any time under Trump and has plummeted.
of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just
False.
like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear.
And actually, I forgot that she listed off those there more than just the sexual assault that Trump engaged in and was credibly accused of. And I think this is after Harris. I got all the clips all mixed up, but this is after Harris brought up the point that people leave Trump's rallies and people are bored with you, Johnny. Which again, it's not that she wants the audience to hear this. She wanted this to get in his head and then make him say stuff like.
And Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the.
That look on her face is debate prep worked, because this is what we wanted you to do. Because it's so good. I'm just realizing here with you that for weeks now I've been stressing over this debate, hoping all these points would be brought up, and they were all brought up. I can't think of something right now that, dang it, she didn't get to make this point. All brought up. And here, do you know why it was so good? She made the point about the border security bill before what you just watched. Said Trump shot it down. The question, this was supposed to be Trump's big moment. What does he say all the time? They're coming from jails, they're coming from jails. He was gonna get to go through that rant again because the question was about border crossings. And Harris has a chance to go through and say, we had this once in a generation aggressive border security bill. Conservatives wrote it. We got on board with it. We want to take action. He got Republicans to shoot it down. Oh, and by the way, Trump, no one likes you and your rallies suck. And so then his brain latches onto that, responds to it, and he didn't get the response to her point about the border security bill that he could have otherwise. Oh, gosh. It's just too brilliant. You have this.
Voters, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates.
Completely false statement. And he got confused because his brain's turning to mush. And he was thinking of the former Virginia governor. He said West Virginia, which would probably mean it was a Republican governor if he's, if he wasn't all messed up, he would realize that. Messed up in the brain, I guess, or mixed up. And then the actual clip he's talking about is not of post-birth executions as he lies about over and over again. But instead, I'm pretty sure last time we looked at it, to fact check what he was talking about, it was like stillborn babies and just the tragedy of a baby being born, but it wasn't viable. So just lying. Oh, there's so many good things. You know what? Just stick with me. It's gonna be a long segment. It's a special night. Here's more.
And border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight.
And throughout the debate, she cited a bunch of specifics of home buyer related policy, child tax credit related policy, investing in American manufacturing specifics. Again, go watch it, or we've heard at her past events her go through those. But that was good to see, especially contrasted against Trump's complete and total lack of specifics. Then you have this.
Doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising.
Yeah, and again, credit to the hosts for just throwing in quick fact checks there. You can't do it with everything, otherwise the whole debate would be Trump talks for a minute. You had to fact check him for 10 minutes after that to dissect why it was all so dishonest. Having to do live fact checking really emphasized that for me, where I'm, wait, I haven't even finished this sentence and there's a new lie that we need to fact check. Jaden, take that down, put up a new one. And so you can't do it all, but I like every so often when there's a blatant lie, fact check it to show the audience this guy's lying. And then Harris also made those points very effectively. Now, this is a part of our first question. I don't know if it captures the particular moments that I'm sure Fox News is going to obsess over. There were times where Harris, at the beginning, that is, came off nervous. It happens. They're going to obsess over it. And this may have an example of it from the beginning.
Your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy.
Yeah, so that doesn't actually capture it all. That was flawless. But at some time during that first answer, there were moments that felt a little bit shaky. But again, then she grabbed her footing, or whatever the phrase is. And for the rest of the debate, it was just, I wish we had a camera on sort of where the control room, where the guys are. Because all of my reaction on camera, but then there's off, just one moment after another. And I can't capture it in this. There were just so many times where she would make these points that were so correct, but then also just sort of aggressive against Trump, and it threw him off. And I guess we should end with this, her closing statement.
So I think you've heard tonight 2 very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining.
And it continues, but absolutely, I'm about to sneeze. That's what I just realized, and I'm holding in it. We're good. So I'm really happy right now. That went about as well as it could have. Trump didn't get good points in. Harris did. His vibe, unhinged. Her vibe, stable, presidential. She was able to manipulate, in the best of ways, him and have him react in the very ways that you know they practice behind the scenes. And it's great. And the points that the American people needed to see, because over and over again, polls are showing people, as they learn about her, are liking her, but they just don't know enough about her, some of the undecided people. If you tune into this, you learned a lot. Yes, about Trump, and there were attacks. And that was a lot of this, because that's sort of fun. But there was also substance. And when you hear Trump just sort of screaming about we're a failing nation and January 6th was great and blah, 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 and then you hear her just walking through sort of level-headed, things she wants to do, in part credible by the fact that the record of Biden-Harris has been strong despite perception being often otherwise. And it was a fantastic night. So that's reason number one why I'm over the moon. Reason number two is I just saw Ben walk in with a big bag of food. And so I'm going to eat that because I'm very hungry. So let me know in the comments what you thought of the debate. What a night of relief, but also sort of a jolt of energy. And thank you for viewing the show. Thank you to all who tuned in. It was crazy viewership, the likes of which we've never seen. And much love to you. Much love to America.